Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make this really cute Peppermint Magazine Peplum top. So if you didn't see my latest video about my spring summer sewing plans, go check that out because I'm talking about what I'm going to do with this pattern, and today this is one of the sew-alongs. So I found this pattern online. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can find it and download it for free. I've printed mine at home and cut out all the pattern pieces myself, though you can send it off to get it done professionally if you want, but I just chose to do it myself and it worked out fine. So the fabric I'm going to be using is this beautiful double gauze cotton I got from Fabric Godmother, and it's in the colour gold. I fell in love with this. I got the last metre, so I'm hoping that it's enough to make the peplum top, but I'm also wanting to add a sleeve to the top. I've got the sleeve pattern here, so I'm hoping to use that to create a nice little like top with a little capped sleeve, and so I'm going to try and attempt that today. This is a sew along, so if you want to test out this pattern for yourself, it's great for beginners. It's really simple and easy to follow. So I thought I'd create this video for you at home to see how it's done and what mine came out like. First, I'm going to go through some things that you're going to need. First is 1 metre of fabric. You need to make sure your fabric is 60 inches wide. That's just so the pattern has enough room to fit on the fabric. You can get all the pieces on, and it says that in the instructions, so that's what I went with. Second most important thing, the pattern itself and the instructions. I know this is going to be a sew along, but always keep the instructions to hand just in case you get a little confused or you need to be able to take this a bit more of a slower pace. You can save this video, you can like it, and you can find it again in your videos to watch to do the next step. I also have my fabric scissors. If you are cutting this pattern out from scratch, you've printed it off and you're laying it all out, make sure you use your paper scissors to cut the pattern. I have a small pair of scissors to cut loose threads and things like that, just so I don't have to use the big bulky ones. My pins and pin cushion. My sewing clips, just in case I prefer to use these when it's a bit quicker than using pins. These are also great if you don't want to put pins into delicate fabrics. You can use these instead, which won't cause any rips or pulls within the fibre makeup of your fabric. My chalk pen, fabric marking tool, whichever one you prefer to use or is most suitable for you, use that. An unpicker. It's not something I always want to have to hand, but it is something I keep to hand just in case I need to do a little unpicking on a seam. And finally, my thread and matching spool. When you order online, some places offer free matching of thread for your fabric. This is not something I did because I knew I already had the same sort of colour, so I didn't need to do that. The last two things you're going to need is obviously your sewing machine and a ironing board. So make sure you have washed your fabric and ironed it before you use it. I'm about to iron mine now, and then we're going to get started. So before we get started, I went ahead and ironed all my pieces. So all my pieces are fairly nice and flat, ready to lay on. Any of them that you feel like have got a crinkle or a big fold anywhere, give them an iron on a coolish heat, just so that you can get all that out and they're nice and flat, ready to put on your fabric. So as you might be able to see, there is a diagram here of how to lay out the pattern pieces. So I'm going to do that now and see if I've got room for the sleeve while doing so. So now I've got all my pieces in place, I'm going to pin them down so none of them move, and then I can cut them out. Before you do, make sure you take your tape measure and check the grain lines are all even from each point, from the grain line edge until the edge of the fabric. Do that for each single piece and then you can cut them out. Once you've got everything pinned in place, start cutting out. So once we've cut all our pieces out, the next part is to start assembling the bodice. So that means taking the two back pieces and joining them together. So you want to start with your back piece. And you want to be removing the pins. So I'm going to move over to sewing clips because I find these easier. Make sure you mark on any notches. So there's like a double, as you can see, mark on these notches so you've got a double line and a single there. The same at that point. You want to make sure you mark these on with a pen or fabric marking tool, or even just clip into the seam allowance, though I don't like to do that because I often cut too far and then end up with a little niggle. So because the way I laid out my fabric, I don't need to change anything. Just clip it together along this line, 1.5 centimeters or 5/8 of an inch. So you want to sew that down this. So you want to be sewing down this edge together. So now you should have your back seam already together like so. I think what I'm going to do is get my overlocker and just overlock my seams as I go, just to make sure that nothing kind of comes apart. This is just because it looks like it might be a fabric that frays over time. I'd rather overlock it and make sure it is nice. So before I do the overlocking, I'm going to move on to the next step, which is joining the two shoulder pieces to the front piece. So if you can see here on our front piece, we've got two notches, and on our shoulder piece, we've got two notches. So this side wants to be going down like so. Clip those in place and sew them together. So as you can see, I've clipped those in place. Now I'm going to sew them together, ready to move on to the next step. So you can see I've got the straps ready on the front piece. So the next step is to join the back pieces to the front. So I want to make sure we're putting our right sides together. So you want to make sure that you've got the seam in the back here visible, and then you just want to line up the shoulder sleeve, the shoulder seams together and clip them in place. So as you can see, that's clipped together on the shoulder seams at the top. I'm going to sew that together now. So now you should have all your pieces sewn together. Got a nice expanse, full piece that then will hang like so. So the next step is to keep it turned with the outside seams out, and you want to be joining the side seams together. So this is this one, and same on the other side. So I'm just going to pin those in place. So it's sewing down this seam with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance again, and do the same for the other side. So there you go, you should have now what looks like more like a garment. Obviously there's a lot of rough edges, but we'll be taking care of those soon with the binding. So before we move on, I'm going to overlock these seams just to make sure they are nice and covered and to stop any fraying happening. So now you want to make sure that you've turned your fabric to the right side out, so all your seams are on the inside. And now we're going to do the neckline. The neckline, to bind it off, is the piece that's got the little like point. So you want to sew that together with the 1.5 centimetre seam allowance and place that on the back seam. So it lines up just nice. You want to pin it or clip it all the way around, creating a nice smooth edge. Making sure the raw edges line up together, ready for when you sew it on. And then once you've got that pinned in place, you want to take it to the sewing machine and sew. So you want to sew that in place with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. I'll do that now. So once you've sewn your binding around the edge, as you can see mine's in place, take that to the sewing machine. Trim down your edges on the inside. So trim down your seam here, pull that over, fold the raw edge in and in again, and then you'll create a nice crisp edge along, like so. I'll show you once I've ironed and we'll go to the next step. So as you can see, I've set in the binding around the neck hole and set in the sleeves, and I've hemmed those as well, as you'll be able to see just there. And now we're moving on to the peplum part of the top. So you have two pieces, one is the front and one is the back gathers. These will get joined together. So you'll join the raw edges together, gather it up. You'll see here there's some markings. You'll see there the markings, and that's the points to gather the fabric. So if I lay this out. So I like to join these up first, then gather together into the bottom, just so then. So first I like to join these together on the raw edges, so I've got one long piece. Then I'll hem this, and then I can attach it to the actual top. So as you can see, I've done my hem on my peplum. I turned it up a centimetre and then a centimetre again, just to give it a nice solid edging on the underneath. And now I'm going to attach it to my top. So when you're lining up your peplum along with your top, you want to make sure that the shortest piece, which is the back piece, the back gathers, which is this side, goes to the back of your garment. You also want to make sure that your seam on each side of your gathers matches up with the seam on each side of your matches up with the side seams of your t-shirt. So if you want to save some time, match up and then create these ruffles along, so then when you're sewing you can literally just press down the ruffle and sew that in place, and then that's creating like a little pleat and a little like the little gathers, but you just don't have to sit and hand gather to create a technique, which can often be one of the most time costly things, and I find it so boring to do. I'm going to repeat the same method for the front. So find your centre, which is here for me, to match my centre in the front of the body. Pin that in place, and then at least you know you've got an equal set of gathers on each side of your top. And just start pinning. got them all pinned in place. I'm going to sew them and then I'll show you the last step. So as you can see, I've got it all hemmed nicely, and I've even overlocked the inner edges because this fabric will fray when it goes in the wash. All the edges are nice and neat, and that is me done. I'm really excited to wear this. I think it would be a great addition to my summer wardrobe, and I'll show you some pictures of me in it now.